All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Ooh, good one.
I thought so too. We always
Yeah.
talk about wanting to build those good habits and ditch the bad ones, but who has time for a total life overhaul?
Right.
Well, this book is all about how small changes can actually lead to huge results over time.
I like that. Small changes, big results.
And the first thing that really stuck out to me was this idea of the power of compounding. But not just with, like, money.
Yeah.
It's like with every choice we make, every single day, we're either adding something good or something, well, not so good. Just like with interest.
That's a great way to think about it. Like, even those little things we do every day can have a big impact in the long run.
Exactly. And then Clear just lays it out there right in the beginning with this quote.
Let's hear it.
Time magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Powerful stuff.
Ooh, that's a good one. It really makes you think.
Right. Like suddenly that extra cookie or hitting snooze one more time doesn't seem so harmless. So think about it, those of you listening. What little choices are you making each day? Are they moving you closer to what you want or further away?
It's a good question for all of us to consider.
For sure. But what about when you are doing the work, putting in the effort, but it just feels like nothing is happening? I think we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of spinning your wheels and getting nowhere, it's super frustrating.
And that's where Clear introduces this idea of what he calls the plateau of latent potential. It's basically saying that when you feel like you're stuck, you're actually not. You're just building up to a breakthrough.
Okay, I like that. The plateau of latent potential. So it's not that progress isn't happening, it's just hidden for a while.
Exactly. You can't always see the results right away. Clear uses the analogy of heating an ice cube.
I'm listening.
You keep applying heat, but for a while, nothing seems to be changing. But the whole time, that heat is working, and then boom, suddenly it hits that melting point, and you have this massive transformation.
Makes sense. It's like those small, consistent efforts are building up beneath the surface until they reach a tipping point and then change.
I love that.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, if you're putting in the effort but not seeing immediate results, don't give up. Keep going. You're building up to something amazing.
Patience is key.
Absolutely. Now, another concept that really blew my mind was this idea that our habits aren't just random actions. They're actually operating in a neurological loop, almost like a program running in the background.
Now that's interesting.
Right. It's called the four-step habit loop. First, there's the cue,
Cue.
like a trigger, something that sets the whole habit process in motion.
I see. So like what would be an example of a cue?
Well, it could be anything, really. Like maybe you always check your phone when you hear a notification. The notification sound is the cue. Or maybe you crave a sugary snack every afternoon around 3 p.m. The time of day is the cue.
Ah, okay. So the cue kind of sets the stage for the habit. What happens next?
Then comes the craving. That's the desire, the motivation to actually do the habit. So in the phone example, the craving would be that feeling of wanting to see what the notification is about.
So it's not just about automatically checking your phone. It's about feeling compelled to do it.
Right. And then, of course, there's the response, which is the actual habit itself. You check your phone.
Okay, so cue, craving, response. That's 3. What's the 4th step?
The reward. That's the satisfying feeling you get after doing the habit. So in our phone example, maybe the reward is finding out you got a nice message from a friend or seeing a funny meme.
I see. And that reward reinforces the habit loop, making you more likely to repeat it next time the cue pops up.
Bingo. So to change a habit, you need to understand the mechanics of that loop. That's super helpful. Now, Clear talks about some practical tools in the book, and one that I found really helpful was the Habits Scorecard.
The habits scorecard, what's that?
It's basically just making a list of all the habits you do on a daily basis. Then you go through and label each one as good, bad, or neutral.
That sounds simple enough. But how does that help you change your habits?
Well, by becoming more aware of your habits, you can start to identify patterns and see which ones are moving you closer to your goals and which ones are holding you back.
Oh, I see. It's like taking inventory of your habits, raising your awareness of what you actually do each day.
Exactly. It's like, how can you change something if you don't even realize you're doing it in the first place?
That makes a lot of sense. Awareness is definitely the first step to change.
Right. And it reminds me of the story Clear tells about those Japanese train conductors.
Oh, yeah. What about them?
They use this system called point and call to reduce errors. Basically, they point at something and call out what they're doing, like signal is green.
It sounds kind of silly, but I bet it works.
It does. It forces them to be super present and aware of each action.
So just by adding that extra layer of awareness, they're able to catch potential errors before they happen. That's really cool.
It is. Okay. So this next part totally blew my mind. It's how much our environment actually shapes our habits without us even realizing it.
Our environment, like how our surroundings influence our behavior.
Yeah. Clear says our environment is like this invisible hand guiding our choices.
I've never thought about it like that, but it makes sense.
He talks about this study at a hospital cafeteria.
A hospital cafeteria? What happened there?
Well, they wanted to see if they could get people to eat healthier. So they redesigned the layout of the cafeteria and put the healthier food choices in more prominent, convenient spots.
Like making it easier to grab an apple than a bag of chips?
Exactly. And guess what? People started eating more healthy food just by changing the environment.
Wow, that's incredible. It really shows how much power our surroundings have over our choices.
Right. It's like if you want to read more, don't bury those books in a drawer. Keep them on your nightstand where you'll actually see them.
Good point. Or if you want to drink more water, keep a full glass on your desk.
Totally. Make those good choices the easy choices.
So it's all about designing your environment to support the habits you want to build. I love that.
Me too. So now you've got your environment set up for success. But let's be real. Starting a new habit can still feel so daunting.
Hey.
And that's where the 2-minute rule comes in.
The 2-minute rule. Okay, what's the secret?
It's all about making that first step ridiculously easy.
Hmm.
The initial action should feel almost effortless.
Give me an example.
Say you want to run a marathon. Don't even think about those 26 miles. Just focus on putting on your running shoes. That's it. The first step is as simple as that.
Oh, I like that. So it's about lowering that barrier to entry and tricking your brain into getting started.
Exactly. Because once you've overcome that initial resistance, it's so much easier to keep going.
Smart. You've already started, so why not take a few more steps?
Precisely. It's all about those tiny wins that build momentum. And speaking of influences, we can't forget about the power of the people we surround ourselves with.
Oh yeah, the company we keep definitely has an impact on our behavior.
Clear calls this social influence, and he points out 3 groups that have a big influence on our habits: the close, the many, and the powerful.
Interesting. So the close would be our family and close friends, right?
Exactly. The people we spend the most time with. Then there's the many, which refers to the larger groups we're a part of, like our community, our workplace, or online communities.
And the powerful. Who are they?
Those are the people we admire, respect, or look up to. They could be celebrities, mentors, or even just people we see as successful in areas we want to improve in.
I get it. It's like we naturally tend to adopt the habits and behaviors of the people we're around, especially those we admire or aspire to be like.
It's fascinating how these groups shape our behavior, often without us even realizing it. Think about the Polgar sisters.
The Polgar sisters. Refresh my memory.
They were these 3 sisters who became chess prodigies, and their father was really intentional about creating an environment where chess was just the norm.
Ah, I remember now. They grew up playing chess constantly, and they all became incredibly skilled.
Exactly. And it shows how powerful it can be to be part of a group where a specific behavior is just part of the culture.
So it's not just about willpower, it's about surrounding yourself with the right people who support the habits you want to build.
Absolutely. So those of you listening, take a look at your social circles. Do they align with your goals? Are you spending time with people who inspire you and lift you up?
Good food for thought.
All right, so we've talked about environment, social influence, but there's another crucial piece to this habit puzzle.
What's that?
Habits need to be satisfying to stick. We're much more likely to repeat a behavior when it feels good.
Oh, for sure. Pleasure is a powerful motivator. But how do you make a habit satisfying?
Well, Clear shares this fascinating example of a hand-washing study they did in Pakistan. They found that by making the act of washing hands more enjoyable, people were way more likely to do it.
Okay, I'm curious. How did they make hand washing more enjoyable?
They simply provided nicer soap. It sounds so simple, but it made a huge difference.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So just by making the experience more pleasurable, they were able to significantly improve hand washing rates.
And guess what? That led to a dramatic reduction in the spread of disease.
See, making those good habits enjoyable really does work. It makes you want to do them more often.
Exactly. So for those of you listening, think about the habits you're trying to build. How can you make them more enjoyable?
Maybe pair them with activities you already love, or find ways to celebrate your progress.
Those are great ideas. And finally, we have to talk about this concept that Clear calls finding your game.
Finding your game. Okay, what's that all about?
It's about focusing on habits that align with your natural strengths and interests.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's like when you're doing something you're naturally good at and you enjoy it, it doesn't feel like a chore, it's fun.
Exactly. And progress feels so much easier and more rewarding.
So it's not about forcing yourself to do things you hate, it's about finding what works for you and playing to your strengths.
Clear says, genes do not determine your destiny. They determine your areas of opportunity.
I love that quote. It's so empowering. It's like we all have unique talents and abilities, and it's up to us to figure out how to leverage them.
That's exactly it. So the question is, what are you naturally drawn to? What are the things that make you come alive?
Those are clues to the habits that will be most fulfilling and impactful in your life.
This has been such a great deep dive into atomic habits. We've covered so much ground, from the power of compounding to the sneaky influence of our environment and the importance of finding what truly works for you.
It's been fascinating, and we've still got so much more to explore.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. We're still deep in atomic habits, and this time we're tackling the tough stuff.
Yeah, breaking those bad habits, sometimes it feels like they have a mind of their own.
Absolutely. But James Clear gives us some serious tools to break free. One that I found really helpful is making those bad habits invisible.
Invisible, like just pretend they don't exist.
Not quite. Remember that habit loop we talked about?
The cue, craving, response, reward.
Yep. The cue is that trigger. So if we can reduce exposure to those triggers, we're way less likely to even think about the bad habit.
So it's about cutting off the bad habit at the source.
Exactly. It goes back to how powerful our environment is. Clear tells this story about Vietnam War vets who were struggling with heroin addiction.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of them actually overcame their addiction when they came home
Just from being back home. How?
because they weren't surrounded by all those cues that triggered their drug use anymore.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like the environment itself was feeding the addiction.
And the reverse was true, too. A change of environment can really disrupt that bad habit cycle. So if you're trying to quit something, think about the triggers in your environment. What can you change?
Makes sense. Like if you always snack on junk food while watching TV, maybe move the snacks out of reach.
You got it. Make those bad habits less visible, less accessible.
Okay, that's doable. But what about those situations where you can't just remove the cue? Like if you're trying to use social media less but need it for work, you can't just delete everything, right?
Right. In those cases, Clear suggests making the bad habit unattractive.
Attractive.
Yeah. It's all about shifting your perspective.
No, so instead of focusing on how good that bad habit feels in the moment, you focus on the downsides.
Exactly. Clear uses smoking as an example. Instead of seeing that cigarette break as a relaxing reward, you start seeing it as, well, harmful and unattractive.
So you reframe it, and suddenly it's not so appealing anymore.
Right, and that weakens that craving.
Cool. Now, speaking of making things less appealing, Claire also talks about increasing friction.
Right? Absolutely. He says the more effort it takes to do something, the less likely you are to actually do it.
It's like putting obstacles in the way of your bad habits. I like it.
Right. And he has this great story about the invention of the cash register. This saloon owner, James Ritty, kept getting robbed by his employees.
So he invented the cash register to stop them.
Exactly. It made stealing way harder, and employee theft dropped like crazy.
It's so clever. So how can we use this friction idea in our own lives?
Well, think about those extra steps you can add. Want to watch less TV? Unplug it after each use or hide the remote.
Ooh, sneaky.
Trying to cut back on social media, log out after each session, or bury those apps deep in some folder.
Can't come work for it.
Exactly. Anything to make those bad habits require just a little more effort.
Love it. Okay, but what about those habits that are just so hard to resist? We know they're bad, but those temptations are strong.
Well, remember when we talked about those immediate versus delayed rewards?
Yeah, how our brains love instant gratification.
That's why we go for that pizza even when we want the six-pack abs.
So frustrating. So how do we outsmart our brains?
Clear suggests making bad habits less satisfying. He talks about something called a habit contract.
A contract, like we're signing our life away.
Not quite. It's more like a written agreement with yourself, or maybe with an accountability partner.
So there are consequences if you break the contract.
Right. Clear gives this example of an entrepreneur, Brian Harris, who wanted to lose weight.
I'm listening.
He made this habit contract with his trainer, A&D, his wife. It outlined specific goals and, get this, financial consequences for not meeting them.
Whoa. He put his money where his mouth was? Did it work?
Totally. That contract made those bad habits a lot more painful, so those unhealthy choices weren't so appealing anymore.
Wow. So even if we don't make an actual contract, just having that accountability buddy can help.
Absolutely. It's like having someone in your corner cheering you on and keeping you honest. And circling back to finding your game, remember, choose habits that match your natural abilities.
Right. It shouldn't feel like a constant uphill battle.
Exactly. When you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work, and progress feels easier.
Remember, Clear says, genes do not determine your destiny. They determine your areas of opportunity.
Love that. So think about it. What comes naturally to you? What are you drawn to?
Those are the habits that will be most fulfilling and stick with you.
And that brings us to a cool concept. Variable reward.
Variable rewards.
Yeah, think about those little unexpected bits of pleasure that keep us coming back for more.
Like what?
Slot machines.
Slot machines, really.
Yeah, you never know when you'll win, so you keep playing.
It's that anticipation, right?
Exactly. It taps into our brain's reward systems and keeps us motivated.
So how can we use that for good habits?
Well, sometimes, even if the task is a bit boring, there are little surprises along the way.
So it's not just about discipline, but also about finding those little joys in the process.
You got it. And it all comes back to making those good habits satisfying.
Right. We're way more likely to stick with something if we enjoy it.
Exactly. And that can be as simple as tracking your progress and seeing how far you've come.
Oh, yeah. It's like a visual reminder of all your hard work paying off.
It helps you stay focused. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins. Every step forward is worth celebrating.
So enjoy the journey, not just the destination. What other tips do you have?
Positive self-talk. The way we talk to ourselves matters.
So instead of saying, this is so hard, we can say, I can do this.
Exactly. Celebrate your efforts, acknowledge your progress, and keep going.
This has been eye-opening. We've learned so much about breaking bad habits and building good ones.
And we're not done yet.
Back for more Atomic Habits. It's amazing how these tiny habits can really shape our lives.
It really is, and we've still got more to uncover. This time, let's go for those next-level techniques. James Clear talks about something called habit shaping.
Habit shaping.
Yeah, it's like gradually increasing the difficulty of a habit. Think of it like weight training, but for habits. You start with a weight you can handle and then slowly increase it as you get stronger.
So like if you want to run a marathon, you don't start by trying to run 26 miles right away.
Exactly. You start small and build up your endurance over time. It's about those little changes that challenge you just enough without being too overwhelming.
That reminds me of the 2-minute rule. You start with a super easy version of the habit and build from there.
That's it. And habit shaping takes it a step further. Once you've nailed that 2-minute version, you keep raising the bar, pushing yourself a little bit more each time.
So it's about finding that balance between pushing yourself and not getting discouraged.
Right. Clear calls it the Goldilocks rule. You want that sweet spot where it's challenging enough to keep you engaged, but not so hard that you want to quit.
It makes sense. If it's too easy, you get bored. Too hard, and you get frustrated.
Exactly. And sometimes staying in that groove means dealing with a bit of boredom. Clear says that successful people aren't necessarily more passionate or motivated than anyone else.
So what's their secret?
They've learned how to handle the boredom of doing the work day after day.
They just keep showing up, even when it's not exciting.
Right, they stick to the plan. And sometimes to stick with it, you have to find ways to make the work more enjoyable, even if the task itself isn't that thrilling.
So how do you stay motivated when the work gets boring?
One way is to reframe your thinking. Instead of seeing it as a chore, see it as a chance to get better. Like, embrace the challenge. You could also try mixing things up a bit.
Keep it fresh.
Exactly. And don't forget about breaks. Sometimes you need to step away for a bit and come back with fresh eyes. Let your brain recharge.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to take care of ourselves.
True. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive into atomic habits, let's talk about reflection. Clear says it's important to regularly look at your habits and make adjustments as needed.
Like, take a step back and see what's working and what's not.
You got it. Ask yourself, are these habits still helping me reach my goals? Are they still challenging me in a good way? Are they helping me grow? If not, maybe it's time for some tweaks.
It's easy to fall into routines without realizing they're not working for us anymore.
It happens to the best of us. But remember, you have the power to change. Start small, be consistent, and never stop growing.
This deep dive into atomic habits has been amazing. We've learned so many practical ways to break those bad habits and build good ones that can really make a difference in our lives.
We've covered so much. From those small changes to the importance of our environment and how to make those good habits stick.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you, listening, have found some valuable insights you can start using today.
Even the tiniest change, when you stick with it, can lead to big results.
So, as we finish up, here's something to think about. What's one tiny habit you're going to focus on building or breaking? What's one small step you can take right now to make it happen? Remember, the power to change is in your hands.
That's it for our deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you enjoyed it.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.